Wait, don't scroll past this. Something you've been stuck in is breaking right now, and deep down you can feel it, can't you? This isn't random. This moment isn't coincidence. You didn't just land here by chance. Because for a long time you've been trapped in something you couldn't fully explain. A cycle, same patterns, same emotions, same kind of pain, repeating in different forms, different people but the same disappointment, different situations but the same outcome. And every time you thought, maybe this time it will be different, it wasn't. That's what hurt the most. Not just the pain, but the repetition of it. The feeling that no matter what you did, you somehow ended up back there again. Back in confusion, back in exhaustion, back in questioning yourself. Why does this keep happening to me? You asked that more times than you can count. And no one really gave you a real answer. Because this wasn't just life being unfair. This was deeper. This was a cycle that was shaping you while also draining you. And here's the part most people don't understand. Cycles don't just repeat randomly. They repeat until something inside you changes, until you see differently, until you choose differently, until you become someone who no longer belongs in that loop. And that's where you are right now. Something inside you has shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, powerfully. You're not reacting the same anymore. Things that used to trigger you don't hit as hard. Situations that used to pull you in now feel off, almost like you're outgrowing them. And that's exactly what's happening. You're not stuck anymore. You're shedding. You're stepping out of a version of yourself that was tied to that cycle. Because that version of you was still learning, still healing, still trying to understand. But this version of you sees more, feels deeper, and most importantly, knows better. You started noticing things you ignored before. The red flags, the patterns, the energy shifts. You're no longer blind to it. And that changes everything. Because once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. And once you know your worth, you can't keep accepting what diminishes it. That's why things have felt strange lately. Uncomfortable, like something is ending but you don't fully know what's beginning. That in-between space, it's not easy. It feels like loss, like confusion, like everything is uncertain, but what you're actually feeling is release. You're detaching from what once defined your reality, from habits, from people, from environments that kept the cycle alive. And let's be honest, part of you is scared, because even though the cycle was painful, it was familiar. You knew how it worked. You knew what to expect. There's a strange comfort in predictability, even when it hurts. But now you're stepping into something unknown, and that uncertainty feels overwhelming. But listen carefully. The unknown is not your enemy. It's your exit. This is where freedom begins. Not when everything feels safe, but when everything starts to change. You're no longer looping. You're evolving. That's why certain connections feel distant now. That's why conversations feel forced. That's why you can't go back to being who you were, even if you tried. Because your spirit has already moved forward, and your life is catching up. You're not losing people. You're losing attachments to patterns. You're not being rejected. You're being redirected. And yes, it hurts. Because growth isn't just about gaining, it's about releasing, letting go of what once felt like home, but no longer aligns with who you're becoming. And that takes strength, more than most people realize, because breaking a cycle isn't just about walking away. It's about resisting the pull to go back. It's about choosing differently, even when the old way feels easier. And you've been doing that, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when no one else understands. You've been choosing growth. And that's why this is happening now. This is why it's ending. Not because you got lucky, but because you've changed. Because you endured. Because you stayed when things tried to break you. Think about everything you've been through, the moments you almost gave up, the nights you felt completely alone, the times you questioned your worth, and yet you're still here, still standing, still searching for something real. That's not weakness, that's resilience. And resilience breaks cycles. You weren't meant to stay stuck. You were meant to rise out of it, to see it, to understand it, and then to outgrow it. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you chosen. Not because you were spared from pain, but because you transformed through it. Most people stay in cycles their whole lives, repeating the same patterns with different faces, never questioning it, never breaking free. But you started asking questions. You started looking within. You started noticing, this isn't right. And that awareness, that was the beginning of your freedom. Even if you didn't realize it at the time, because once awareness enters, the cycle begins to crack. And now, it's collapsing. That's why things feel like they're falling apart. Because they are. But not in a negative way, in a necessary way. Old versions of your life are dissolving. Old identities are fading. Old attachments are losing their grip. And what's left is you, your real self. The version of you that isn't controlled by fear or validation or repetition. The version of you that chooses with clarity, that moves with intention, that no longer settles for what drains you. And this version of you cannot exist in that old cycle. That's why it's ending. It has to, because you've outgrown it. You've elevated beyond it. You've become someone who no longer fits inside it. And yes, there will be moments where you miss it, where you feel tempted to go back to what's familiar, to what once felt like comfort. But remember this, familiar doesn't mean right, and comfort doesn't mean growth. You didn't come this far to repeat what you already survived. You didn't heal just to reopen the same wounds. You didn't wake up just to go back to sleep. This is your turning point, the moment where everything shifts, not because something outside changed, but because you did. And from this point forward, your life will reflect that. Different choices, different energy, different outcomes. Because you are no longer the same person who entered that cycle. You've evolved, and evolution always leads to separation from what no longer aligns, from what no longer resonates, from what no longer serves you. That's why it feels like an ending, because it is, but it's also a beginning, a powerful one, a real one, the kind that doesn't loop, the kind that expands. You're stepping into a new phase, one where you're not just surviving, but aligning with peace, with clarity, with purpose. And it won't look like your past, because your past was a lesson, not a destination. So don't fear this shift. Don't resist it. This is what you've been moving toward, even when you didn't realize it. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every moment of confusion was guiding you here, to this exact point, where you finally break free. And the most powerful part? You did it from within. No one handed this to you. No one saved you. You became aware. You became stronger. You became different. And that's what ended the cycle. Not luck, not chance, you. So take a moment and really feel that. You're not stuck anymore. You're not repeating anymore. You're not who you used to be anymore. This is the end of everything that kept you small, and the beginning of everything that reflects your true self. It's finally ending, and this time, it's not coming back. Right here, pause for a second. If this message is hitting something deep inside you, just drop a "I feel this" in the comments. You're not alone in this, and you were never meant to be. And that realization, it's going to hit you in waves, not all at once. Because part of you is still catching up to what your soul already knows. There will be moments where you sit in silence and suddenly feel it. That shift, that quiet, undeniable knowing that chapter is really over. And it won't feel loud, it won't feel dramatic, it will feel still, almost peaceful, like something that was once heavy is no longer sitting on your chest. Like you can finally breathe without forcing it. And that's when it truly begins. Not when everything changes outside, but when something inside you finally settles. Because for so long, you were in survival mode, constantly adjusting, constantly overthinking, constantly trying to fix what was never yours to fix. You carried things that were never meant for you, other people's confusion, other people's inconsistency, other people's inability to meet you where you stood. And somehow, you made it your responsibility. You tried harder. You gave more. You stayed longer than you should have, hoping that things would eventually align. But they didn't, because they couldn't. Not at the level you were at anymore. And now you're starting to see that clearly. You're realizing it was never about you not being enough. It was about you being too aligned for what you were holding on to, too aware for what you were tolerating, too evolved for what you were accepting. And that truth, it changes everything, because it removes the blame, it removes the self-doubt, it removes that voice in your head that kept asking, "What am I doing wrong?" You weren't doing anything wrong. You were just outgrowing a space that no longer matched you, and outgrowing something always feels uncomfortable, because growth requires release, and release feels like loss at first. But it's not loss, it's alignment. It's making space for something that actually fits who you are now. And that space, that empty feeling you've been noticing, that silence, that distance, it's not punishment, it's preparation. Because you can't step into something new while still holding on to something old. You can't receive differently if you're still attached to the same patterns. And that's why this phase feels the way it does. It feels like a pause, like everything's slowed down, like things aren't moving the way they used to. But this isn't stagnation, this is recalibration. Your energy is being reset, your focus is shifting, your standards are rising. And that means what used to be normal for you will no longer feel acceptable. You're going to start noticing it more. The way certain people speak to you, the way certain environments drain you, the way certain situations no longer excite you. And instead of ignoring it, you'll feel it deeply, because you're more connected now, more aware, more in tune with what's right for you. And that awareness, it won't let you go back, even if you try, even if you feel tempted, even if you miss what once was. Because now, you can feel the difference between what's aligned and what's not. And once you feel that difference, you can't pretend anymore. You can't force yourself into spaces that shrink you. You can't lower yourself to maintain something that drains you. You can't keep repeating what your soul has already outgrown. That's the real shift. It's not just external, it's internal. It's in your standards, your boundaries, your energy, the way you move, the way you respond, the way you choose. And that's what makes this ending permanent. Because this time, it's not just your situation that changed, it's you. And when you change, your reality has no choice but to follow. So don't be surprised if things start to fall away faster now. If certain connections fade without explanation, if opportunities that once seemed important no longer feel right, if paths you thought you wanted suddenly feel misaligned, that's not confusion, that's clarity. It may feel unfamiliar, but it's real. And it's leading you exactly where you're meant to be, even if you can't fully see it yet. Because right now, you're still in between. Not who you used to be, but not fully stepped into what's next. And that space, it can feel lonely, it can feel uncertain, but it's also sacred. Because this is where you rebuild, not from pain, but from truth. Not from fear, but from awareness. This is where you redefine everything. What you accept, what you allow, what you align with, and most importantly, who you are. Without the noise, without the pressure, without the old cycle influencing your decisions. This is your reset, your real beginning. And yes, it will require patience. Because real transformation doesn't rush. It unfolds step by step, layer by layer, moment by moment, But every step you take now will be different, more intentional, more aligned, more real, because you're no longer moving from wounds, you're moving from wisdom. And that changes everything. The way you connect, the way you love, the way you trust, the way you see yourself. No more chasing, no more forcing, no more settling. Only alignment, only truth, only what matches your growth. And that kind of life, it doesn't repeat cycles. It expands, it evolves, it elevates. So if you've been feeling like something is ending, you're right. If you've been sensing that things will never be the same again, they won't. And that's a good thing, because what's ending was never meant to stay, and what's coming will match who you've become, not who you used to be. So trust this moment, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it feels uncertain, even if part of you still questions it, because deep down you already know this isn't just another phase, this isn't just another loop. This is the end of everything that kept you repeating, and the beginning of everything that sets you free. You've crossed that line now. There's no going back. Only forward, only upward, only into the life that was always waiting for you on the other side of the cycle. And now that you're here, you're going to start seeing things differently. Not because the world changed overnight, but because your perception did. And perception is everything. The same situations that once confused you will now feel obvious. The same behaviors you once tolerated will now feel unacceptable. The same patterns you once questioned, you'll now recognize instantly. It's like a veil has been lifted, and for the first time, you're seeing things as they truly are. Not as you hoped they would be, not as you tried to make them, but as they actually exist. And that clarity, it's powerful, but it can also feel overwhelming, because with clarity comes truth, and truth doesn't always feel comfortable at first. You might look back at certain moments in your life and finally understand them, why things ended, why things didn't work, why certain people couldn't meet you where you stood. And instead of confusion, there will be acceptance, not forced, not rushed, just natural, because now you see it, you understand it. You've outgrown the need to keep questioning it. And that's when peace begins to replace overthinking. That constant loop in your mind, it starts to quiet down. You stop replaying conversations. You stop trying to decode every little detail. You stop blaming yourself for things that were never in your control. And in that silence, you find something you haven't felt in a long time. Stability. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from being grounded within yourself. You're no longer shaken by everything around you. You're no longer dependent on external validation. You're no longer searching for answers outside of yourself. Because you've realized something important. Everything you were looking for was already within you. You just had to clear the noise to hear it. And that's exactly what this ending has done. It removed the distractions, the illusions, the attachments that were clouding your vision so you could finally reconnect with your own truth. And now that you're here, you'll notice something else. Your energy is different. People can feel it, even if they don't understand it. There's a calmness in you now, a quiet confidence, a presence that wasn't there before. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're not trying to be seen. You're not trying to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. And that changes the way everything interacts with you. Because when you choose yourself, you stop accepting anything that doesn't choose you back. You stop chasing. You stop convincing. You stop settling. And suddenly, the things that once had power over you lose their grip, because your energy is no longer available to them. That's what real freedom looks like. Not just leaving the cycle, but becoming someone who can't be pulled back into it. Someone who sees clearly, chooses wisely, and moves with intention. And from this place, your life begins to align in ways you didn't expect. Not instantly, not all at once, but gradually, naturally. effortlessly. The right opportunities start to feel right. The right people start to feel easy. The right path starts to feel clear. Because now, you're no longer forcing anything. You're allowing, you're flowing, you're trusting. And trust is something you had to rebuild, piece by piece, after everything you went through, after every disappointment, after every moment where things didn't go the way you hoped. You lost trust in people, in situations, maybe even in yourself. But now you're getting it back. Not blindly, not naively, but consciously, with awareness, with boundaries, with wisdom. And that kind of trust is unbreakable because it's not dependent on external outcomes. It's rooted within you. And that's why this new phase of your life will be different. Because you are different. You won't ignore your intuition anymore. You won't silence your inner voice. You won't override what you feel, just to keep something that doesn't align. You've learned too much to go back to that. You've seen too much to pretend again. And that awareness, it protects you, it guides you, it keeps you aligned. Even when things aren't clear, even when the path isn't fully visible, you'll feel it, that inner knowing, that quiet sense of direction, and you'll follow it. Because now, you trust it. That's the shift. From confusion to clarity, from attachment to alignment, from cycles to evolution. And once you reach this point, life stops feeling like something that's happening to you and starts feeling like something that's unfolding for you. Every experience, every connection, every opportunity becomes intentional, meaningful, aligned, not random, not repetitive, but purposeful. And that's when you realize why everything had to happen the way it did, why the cycle had to repeat, why the lessons had to be learned, why the pain had to be felt, not to break you, but to prepare you for this version of yourself, the one who understands, the one who sees, the one who chooses differently. Because without those experiences, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have this awareness, you wouldn't have this strength, and you wouldn't have this freedom. So even the parts that hurt, even the moments you wish never happened, they served a purpose. They led you here, to this ending, to this release, to this new beginning. And now you're stepping into a life that reflects everything you've learned, everything you've become, everything you've realized. A life where you don't have to fight for peace, where you don't have to earn love, where you don't have to prove your worth, because those things are already yours. You just had to become someone who truly believes that, and now you do, not perfectly, not every single moment, but deeply, honestly moment, and that belief will guide everything from here. The way you walk away from what's not right, the way you embrace what is, the way you handle challenges, the way you build your future. Because now, you're not building from wounds, you're building from truth. And that kind of foundation doesn't collapse, it grows, it strengthens, it expands. So as you move forward, remember this feeling, this clarity, this awareness, because this is your anchor now. This is what keeps you grounded, no matter what comes next, and things will come. New opportunities, new connections, new experiences. But this time, you'll meet them differently, with open eyes, with a steady heart, with a clear mind, and most importantly, with a strong sense of self. And that is something no cycle can take away from you again, because you've already broken free. You've already crossed the threshold. You've already become someone who no longer belongs to the past. So keep moving, keep trusting, keep choosing yourself, because this isn't just an ending, it's your transformation, fully realized, fully activated, fully yours. And from here, everything changes, not all at once, but in all the ways that matter, quietly, powerfully, irreversibly. That's the word that will stay with you. Because what's happening right now is not temporary. It's not a phase you'll slip out of. It's not a moment that will fade. This is permanent. Not because life will never challenge you again, but because you are no longer the same person who used to fall back into those patterns. That version of you, the one who tolerated confusion, the one who chased clarity from the wrong places, the one who kept giving chances to what kept hurting you, that version has already closed its chapter, and you can feel it. There's a distance now between who you were and who you are becoming, and sometimes that distance feels emotional. You might even feel a sense of grief, not for the cycle itself, but for the version of you who stayed in it for so long. You'll think about it. The times you ignored your intuition, the times you stayed silent, the times you accepted less when you deserved more. And a part of you might ask, why did I allow that? But don't judge that version of yourself. Don't look back with regret, because that version of you was doing the best it could with the awareness it had. It wasn't weak. It was learning. It wasn't lost. It was evolving. And without that version of you, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have this clarity. You wouldn't have this strength. So instead of regret, feel gratitude for every moment that shaped you, even the ones that hurt, especially the ones that hurt, because they woke you up. They pushed you to question. They forced you to grow. And growth is what brought you here, to this point where you finally see your value clearly, where you finally understand your worth, where you finally realize you don't have to stay anywhere that doesn't feel right. That realization, it's everything. Because once you truly understand your worth, you stop negotiating with what diminishes it. You stop making excuses for what doesn't align. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And that's when your life begins to change in ways you didn't expect. You become more selective, more intentional, more protective of your energy. Not in a closed-off way, but in a conscious way. You start asking yourself different questions. Does this feel right? Does this align with who I am now? Is this adding to my peace or taking from it? And if the answer isn't clear, you don't force it anymore. You don't convince yourself. You don't ignore the feeling. You listen. Because now you know that feeling is there for a reason. It's guiding you, protecting you, aligning you. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes, the clearer it gets, until eventually it becomes your compass, leading you away from what no longer serves you and toward what truly does. And this is where your power really begins, not in controlling everything around you, but in mastering how you respond to it, in choosing where your energy goes, in deciding what you allow into your space. That's real power, and you have it now, even if you're still getting used to it. Even if it still feels new, even if part of you is still adjusting. Because stepping into your power isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming fully yourself, without the filters, without the fear, without the need to fit into anything that doesn't feel authentic. And authenticity is what will guide your next chapter. Not pressure, not expectations, not old habits, just truth. Your truth. And when you live from that place, everything aligns differently. You don't attract the same situations anymore. You don't entertain the same dynamics. You don't repeat the same lessons, because you've already learned them. And life doesn't need to keep teaching you what you already understand. That's why this is the end, not just of a cycle, but of an entire way of being, a way of thinking, a way of reacting, a way of reacting, a way of accepting. All of that is behind you now, and ahead of you is something new, something real, something aligned. It may not be fully clear yet, it may still be unfolding, but you can feel it, that sense of direction, that quiet pull forward, that knowing that you're moving toward something better. And you are, step by step, choice by choice, moment by moment. You're building a life that reflects who you truly are, not who you had to be to survive. And that difference is everything, because surviving keeps you in cycles, but living breaks them, and you're not surviving anymore. You're living, you're choosing, you're evolving, and that evolution will continue, because growth doesn't stop here. It expands, it deepens, it unfolds. But the difference now is that you're growing from a place of awareness, not from a place of pain. You're no longer being forced to change, you're choosing to, and that makes the journey completely different. More peaceful, more intentional, more aligned. So as you move forward, don't look back with doubt. Don't question whether this is real. Don't wonder if you'll fall back into the same patterns, because you won't, not like before. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You've seen too much, felt too much, understood too much, and stood too much, and that awareness is your freedom, permanent, unshakable, yours. So trust it, trust yourself, trust this ending, because it's not taking anything from you, it's giving you everything you were missing. Clarity, peace, alignment, and most importantly, yourself, fully, completely, unapologetically, and from this moment on, you don't go back, you don't repeat, you don't settle, you move forward, stronger, wiser, freer, into a life that finally reflects the truth of who you are. And this time, you stay there. No more circles. No more returning to what broke you. No more abandoning yourself to keep something else. This is where it settles. Not in chaos, but in calm. Not in confusion, but in clarity. You finally reached a place where peace doesn't feel temporary, where silence doesn't feel empty, where being alone doesn't feel like loss. Because you're no longer disconnected from yourself. You're here, present, aware, grounded. And that changes everything. The way you wake up, the way you think, the way you move through your day. There's no rush anymore, no pressure to prove, no need to chase, just a quiet confidence that what's meant for you will meet you where you stand, and what isn't will no longer be able to stay. That's the balance now. Effort without force, openness without losing yourself, growth without pain being the teacher. You graduated from that. You don't need chaos to evolve anymore. You don't need heartbreak to awaken. You don't need loss to understand your value. You already know, and that knowing is your protection. It's your foundation. It's your power. So as this chapter fully closes, take a moment. Not to look back with longing, but to recognize how far you've come. Everything you faced, everything you felt, everything you had to walk through alone. It brought you here, to this version of you who no longer begs for clarity because you are clarity, who no longer searches for peace because you are peace, who no longer waits to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And that is the real ending, not just of a cycle, but of a version of you that no longer exists. So let it go completely, without hesitation, without doubt, without looking back. Because what's ahead of you doesn't require who you used to be. It requires who you are now. And who you are now is ready. Ready for alignment. Ready for truth. Ready for a life that doesn't repeat, but expands. So walk forward with that quiet certainty, with that steady heart, with that unshakable knowing that it's done, it's over. And this time, it's over. And this time, it's not ending in pain. It's ending in power. If you made it to this moment, then you already know something has changed inside you. This is your sign to keep going. Subscribe and stay aligned with what's waking up within you.